welcome back to my channel. So today's video is related to my shirt, Marvel, yes. And what am I doing today? Today I am recapping all 22 Marvel movies. So this is every movie from Infinity War and everything that was released. No. Actually, every movie from Captain Marvel and everything that was released before that, in anticipation of Avengers Endgame, which comes out officially this Friday, but if you're going to an earlier showing like me, then it's on Thursday. The world premiere was yesterday. Monday, I'm filming this video on Tuesday, so I'm really excited. Now, this recap is not going to be super in-depth. It's not going to be, super, dissecting every single movie. I'm kind of just going to give you a rough run-through for those of you who maybe have only seen the Avengers movies, maybe saw one Guardians movie, or maybe just saw Captain Marvel or Black Panther recently, or maybe you've never seen an Avengers movie or a Marvel movie, and you just have heard so much about Endgame that you're eager to watch it. So this is for you. If you have seen all the movies, it'll be a good refresher, especially because I'm giving just quick facts about each of them, kind of like roughly what you need to know in order for Endgame. I'm really excited about this, and I've got Spider Monkey here. Spider Monkey's gonna sit up here with me while I do this. Okay. Now, I am going in chronological order of the MCU timeline. Now, I know this is not the order in which the movies were released, but rather the order in which the timeline goes, roughly, because there's a little bit of like little questionable timeline moments. For example, Ant-Man and the Wasp and Infinity War. It's kind of hard to know if they were really going on at the same time, or what the timeline is in that sense. But for the most part, I'm going with the timeline. I just Googled this to see what other people think the timeline is, so I can kind of follow that. And I'll be kind of looking at my phone just because I have the order of the movies on here. And this probably goes without saying, but I'm going to say it anyway. Spoiler alert, if you have not seen the more recent movies like Captain Marvel, Ant-Man and the Wasp, even Infinity War, I will be talking about every single movie that there is. So just know that there'll be spoilers. Okay, let's get started. Captain America, the First Avenger. So again, this is timeline order, not release date order. Okay, Captain America, the First Avenger. Here, this goes back all the way to, I believe it's like World War II. And we meet Captain America, we meet Bucky Barnes, who later becomes the Winter Soldier, which we'll talk about more later. Peggy Carter as well. Do we meet her in that one? Yes, we do. Then we see Captain America getting the super soldier serum. We also see Tony Stark's father, Howard Stark. And basically, he's the first Avenger. He's this first super-powered human being that we see in these movies. And later on, he gets frozen, but that happens later. Captain Marvel. So this, we fast forward to the 90s. Captain Marvel, I feel like, is the real first Avenger. Now, she's not the first super-powered being on Earth, because we already had Steve Rogers with the super soldier serum, but we get Captain Marvel, who her nickname is Avenger, and then we see later that Nick Fury starts the Avengers Initiative because of her. She is part Kree, part human, due to this whole complex backstory that I'm not going to get into. We think that the Skrulls are bad, and they're different types of aliens. The Skrulls we think are bad, the Kree we think are good. We later find out that it's actually the other way around, and a familiar face that we'll later see in Guardians of the Galaxy, which is Ronan, not to be confused with Ronin, which is probably going to be Hawkeye's new identity. We see that he is a Kree, and we kind of get that first glimpse of him as a villain. Iron Man 1. Iron Man 1, we meet Tony Stark, we meet Rhodey, we meet Pepper Potts, we meet Happy. These are all going to be characters that will be coming out in the future movies. Tony Stark, we learn, is a billionaire, and kind of at the start of the movie, he's all about, he's a little reckless. But as the movie goes on, he kind of has to fight his way out of a situation. So he's kidnapped in, I believe, Afghanistan, I think. Don't hold me to that. And he has to build the Iron Man suit to get out of trouble. Then he fights a villain, and he finds out that truly the Iron Man suit can do good, and he decides to be a hero. So he's also kind of one of those first Avengers, like Steve Rogers and Carol Danvers. We also see the arc reactor. The arc reactor keeps metal pieces from going into his heart. He later doesn't need this, but he still kind of has it, as we see later on in Infinity War. So there's that. Then there's Iron Man 2. Now, there's not much to say about this. It's kind of just a continuation of Iron Man 1. We see more of Tony Stark and Pepper Potts, kind of that relationship building. It is said in the timeline that the Incredible Hulk, which I will talk about in a little bit, and Thor, which I will also talk about in a little bit, all take place during that same week. It's really hard to tell because all these movies were by different directors based off of different comics. So it's kind of hard to really determine like if the timeline is accurate, but that's just something that is being said. The Incredible Hulk, we don't talk about this one that much. As Marvel movies go, this was probably not the best. No, I know it was not the best, but we do meet Bruce Banner, who is played by a different actor at this time. Same thing that happened with Rhodey. But we kind of learn about the backstory. We learn about, his turning into Hulk because of the experiment and all of that. So it's a good introduction to the character, but as a movie, it's not the greatest. Then there's Thor. We meet Thor, who is an Asgardian god. This is part of like Norse mythology. He is a character from Norse mythology as well as the Marvel comics, as are all of these characters. And we also meet his adopted brother Loki. We learn that he's a villain, but as the movies go on, we'll learn that he's not quite as villainous as we might have thought in the beginning. Thor's got a hammer. He's got long hair at this point. Not too much to it. Then we move on to Avengers. Yes! This is the first time that we get the whole group together. So we have the original 6 Avengers, which are Hulk, Captain America, Thor, Iron Man, Black Widow, and Hawkeye. And yeah, really great movie. Loki has the Tesseract. The Tesseract we also see in Captain Marvel. And this is a kind of, we've seen S.H.I.E.L.D. in the other movies, of course, but this is kind of like the first, like, really seeing S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Avengers working together in the Battle of New York. Really awesome. One of the best end credit scenes. The Avengers are all eating shawarma at the end of the movie. Great, just great movie overall. And this kind of, where Iron Man 1 kicked off the MCU, this movie just blasted it into what it is today. Let's see, moving on, we have Iron Man 3. I gotta be real with you guys. This is the only Marvel movie I've never seen. I hate admitting it, so I'm going to skip over this one. I'll say in my own personal opinion, this movie is not crucial to anything in the MCU. If you want to say otherwise, you're welcome to your opinion. And maybe if I had seen the movie, I would think differently. But unfortunately, I haven't seen the movie, and that is on my list of things to do. Thor: The Dark World, so we just get to see more of Thor and Loki and kind of that dynamic. I think Loki dies in this movie. I can't remember. He dies lots of times. We see Jane Foster as well. Thor's on Earth. There's a lot of things going on, but again, nothing super crucial. Captain America, the Winter Soldier. This is where we get a lot more of Bucky Barnes' story. Bucky Barnes is the Winter Soldier. Now he's kind of become the White Wolf. We'll get into that when we talk about Black Panther. And he's just Steve Rogers' best friend, but he's kind of been brainwashed. And he's kind of a threat now, especially in S.H.I.E.L.D.'s eyes. There's a lot going on. We also see Red Skull, who will be a little bit relevant later on in Infinity War. Guardians of the Galaxy. We've seen Thor on Asgard, but now we're getting more into space. We've got this group of just the weirdest team up. The only way I can describe them is the weird space Avengers. Like, that is the best way to describe them. So we've got Gamora, we've got Star-Lord, we've got Drax, we've got Rocket Raccoon, we've got Groot. Just this really, oh, and eventually we have Mantis, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Just this really interesting group. This movie brings so much lightheartedness and comedy to the MCU. But we also learn about some of the Infinity Stones that are in space, and just a lot of other things going on. Again, we see this villain, Ronan, who I think will be relevant in Endgame, possibly. He's a Kree, as I mentioned. Also, Thanos is the father of Gamora and Nebula. At the time, Gamora is a Guardian of the Galaxy. Nebula is not quite. She's kind of a villain. But they both have this goal of killing their father, Thanos. Or he's not really their real father. It's a really complicated story if you think about it. And Thanos is, he started in Avengers. We saw in this end credit scene collecting each of the Infinity Stones. The Infinity Stones are the Time, Space, Soul, Mind, and Power Stone. I think that's all of them. And he's trying to collect these. He wants to snap away half of the universe. I'll get into that in Infinity War, but just a little getting into that. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Not much here, honestly, and I know this isn't like an opinion video, but this was my least favorite MCU movie. I hate to say it. Well, after Incredible Hulk. And it's just that it was more of a filler movie. It was very comedic, very great. We did get to meet Mantis, and Mantis has now become a Guardian of the Galaxy. We also kind of see that Nebula is kind of turning good and wanting to work more with the Guardians to kind of get revenge on Thanos for everything that he put her through. Moving on, we have Avengers Age of Ultron. So in this movie, we meet Scarlet Witch, Wanda Maximoff, and her brother, Pietro, who is Quicksilver. Unfortunately, Quicksilver dies by the end of the movie. We see the Avengers fighting again. Scarlet Witch has now joined them. She's a new Avenger now. Really great movie. Not too much relevant there, though, aside from that. Then we have Ant-Man, another funny movie. Like, if you wanted to group these movies together, Ant-Man and Guardians kind of fall into the same comedic category. Just lighthearted and funny. There's some really great characters. It's a great movie. Basically, we are introduced to the quantum realm and quantum technology, which I think will be very relevant in Endgame and potentially could have the answer to time travel. And we'll talk about more with Ant-Man and the Wasp. We get to meet Ant-Man, Scott Lang, and we are introduced a little bit to his powers, a little bit of what he can do. He kind of can control ants. He can turn small. We learn later that he can also turn big, but we'll get into that in Civil War. Oh, look, that's the next one, Captain America Civil War. Really a great movie, even though the plot is a little bit like, really, guys? So basically, Tony Stark and Captain America have different views about the Sokovia Accords, which are basically the government or the United Nations trying to say, like, we should be able to control when the superheroes do their thing, because there's been a lot of destruction lately in New York and Sokovia and Wakanda and, no, wait, not Wakanda. Ignore that. Everywhere. So that's that. So there's this battle, and they kind of split off into two teams. We also are introduced again to the Winter Soldier. He's back, and we're introduced to the Black Panther, T'Challa, after his father T'Chaka dies in an explosion at the United Nations. We also kind of learned that the Winter Soldier killed Tony Stark's parents, so that gets a little complicated, and the friendship between Tony Stark and Steve Rogers kind of ends there, and we don't see them together again for a while. Doctor Strange. Wait, we actually have. Wait, before I go into that, I wanted to say real quick, we haven't seen them together again. We won't see them for a while. As up to this point everything before Endgame, we have not, between Civil War and Endgame, we have not seen Tony Stark and Steve Rogers together again. Anyway, Doctor Strange. So Doctor Strange is this doctor. He's an actual doctor, which there's a funny line later on in Infinity War where his name is Stephen Strange, so he introduces himself as Doctor Strange. Peter Parker, aka Spider-Man, says he's Peter Parker, and then when Doctor Strange says he's Doctor Strange, he's like, oh, we're using our made-up names. In that case, I'm Spider-Man. So that's kind of a funny thing, but no, his actual name is Dr. Stephen Strange. And we're introduced to him, and he has the Eye of Agamotto, which carries the Time Stone, so he's very relevant to Thanos and the whole plot of Infinity War. And there's a lot that happens in his movie, but that's the most important part of it. Black Panther, oh my gosh. First of all, this is just an amazing movie, visually stunning, the costumes, the set, everything is wow. And so anyway, this is where we meet, we've already met T'Challa, the Black Panther, but he's kind of officially getting his powers, getting into all of that. And there's this whole fight between him and Killmonger, because Killmonger kind of wants to be the Black Panther, take over Wakanda. And there's a whole backstory there, but most importantly, we meet Shuri. Shuri is an extremely intelligent person. She's T'Challa's sister. She's, I think, going to be very important to the MCU. She was important in Infinity War. And we meet, who else do we meet? Oh, we meet Okoye. Okoye has been very important as well. She survived the snap. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And we also meet Nakia, who we kind of only saw in Black Panther, but hopefully there'll be more to her. M'Baku, we meet just the Dora Milaje. There's so much happening in Wakanda. They have vibranium, lots of it. Something that was supposed to be such a rare, scarce resource, they have a bunch of it in Wakanda. That's what Captain America's shield is made out of. So these resources are going to be shared with the Avengers in the future, and that's pretty much that. Spider-Man Homecoming! Okay, wow, that was loud and irritating. I am so sorry. No, Spider-Man Homecoming, I am a huge Spider-Man fan. As you know, we got Spider-Monkey. I have a huge Spider-Man poster in my room. Spider-Man is my favorite superhero from the comics and just in general. And because of this deal with Sony and some stuff going on, Marvel almost couldn't use Spider-Man. It's kind of complicated, really. But this was actually not our first introduction to Spider-Man. I forgot to mention that in Civil War, we were also introduced to Spider-Man. But this is the first official movie with Spider-Man. Iron Man has kind of taken over as his mentor. He's kind of learning to deal with his powers and to be a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man and not such, not to try to be an Avenger. If he wants to join the Avengers, that's one thing. But while he's just Spider-Man and just a normal kid, he needs to learn to use his powers as a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. So Tony Stark is kind of helping him kind of learn to do that. And what else is relevant here? Oh, Pepper Potts. Tony Stark proposes to her at the end of this movie. Also, the Avengers Tower is moving. Not super relevant, but it could be. We do see several things in the move that I hope we do see in Endgame as well. Thor's magic belt, that's something from the comics. The Hulkbuster armor, which we saw in Age of Ultron, where Tony Stark kind of tried to defeat the Hulk with the Hulkbuster armor, so hopefully we'll get to see that again. We did see that in Infinity War, but I'll get into that in a second. Thor Ragnarok, one of the best Marvel movies. This was directed by Taika Waititi, I think is his name. Taika Waititi, I think is his name. This is the best Thor movie by far. We are introduced to Thor's sister, Hela, and she's just so powerful. She destroys Thor's hammer. Just destroys it like nothing. And she pretty much destroys Asgard as well in the end. Thor, with the help of Loki, defeat her, and everything is not great because a lot of the Asgardians died. But, she's defeated. And unfortunately, though, Asgard is destroyed in the process. So, they're kind of roaming around in space trying to find a new home. And, we'll get back to that in a second. So these two movies, which are Ragnarok and the one I'm talking about now, Ant-Man and the Wasp, really, I think, happen at the same time. I'm not too sure. But Ant-Man and the Wasp, we meet the Wasp, Janet Van Dyne, finally. Wait, Hope Van Dyne? Janet Van Dyne. Hope. Janet is the mother. Wait, why am I so confused? Okay, we meet Hope and Janet Van Dyne, the daughter, which is Hope. Yes, it has to be Hope. I'm sorry, I'm so confused. Anyway, she is now the Wasp, and she's fighting alongside Ant-Man, who's kind of still in some legal issues because of Civil War, and they kind of weren't supposed to be doing the whole hero thing because of the Sokovia Accords. So him and Scarlet Witch, Captain America, a bunch of them are in trouble. Black Widow, I think, also. But yeah, that happens, and yeah, we're introduced to the Wasp. That's what's important there. And last but not least, on the timeline, we have Infinity War, which was kind of the last movie timeline-wise. And basically, Thanos is finally able to get all the Infinity Stones, which has kind of been his goal since the first Avengers movie, so we see that happen. In the process, he kind of murders Loki and Gamora. Long story, but that's just the rough details you need to know. Snaps away half the universe. I would tell you which Avengers died, but I think it's easier to tell you which ones survived. So the original 6 survived. Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, Hawkeye, Black Widow, Hulk, or technically Bruce Banner, because he couldn't really become Hulk in this movie. It's kind of complicated. And who else survived? Okoye, Happy and Pepper both survived. Nebula, Rocket Raccoon. And I think that's everybody. So that is what happened in Infinity War. Now, the heroes kind of lost, so we're kind of waiting to see what happens in Endgame because I don't think the heroes can lose. That's just not an option. So that is all the MCU movies in order of the timeline, and basically all the details you need to know for Endgame. So if you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up, comment down below your favorite Marvel movies, and make sure you subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell so you'll be notified every time I post a video. Thanks for watching. Bye.